Ever replay a conversation worrying you've said too much or said something wrong? Ever feel like you're always there for everybody else and no one shows up for you? Ever find yourself scrolling on social media and feel like everyone else has it all together and is so much more happy? Ever catch yourself obsessing over a mistake long after everyone else has forgotten it? Ever find yourself noticing someone's tone or change of behavior and wonder whether you said something wrong or whether they're upset with you? Feeling this way doesn't mean you're broken or that something is wrong with you. It's often showing us that it's a wound or a deficiency that's deep within us that goes all the way back to our childhood. And most importantly, it often reveals that in our childhood, and especially in infancy, we were raised with a phenomena that is called emotionally immature parenting. And emotionally immature parenting is something that we experience when we're younger, and it brings feelings that may be at odds with ourself, but they point really to something deeper, a yearning to find our truth self-worth and for finding wholeness in our lives. The truth is that most of this is not from obvious trauma, although much of it is. A lot of the time, these feelings are from an invisible emotional gap that we carry deep down inside of us, a wound, something that just cannot be filled or distracted by achievements or the things around us in this world. And because it's unseen, it's often unspoken, and sadly, it goes unhealed and unaddressed. That's why we want to bring to you some good news today, that this isn't permanent, that this is a common thought pattern that many people carry, and that with awareness, with healing, and with the right tools, these symptoms can be treated. We can find that wholeness that we're seeking. That's why today we have tackled a subject that we think is really important. It's our second episode of the I Matter mindset, but we're starting off with something so foundational to us as human beings and so prevalent in our society that we cannot start here. We want to address it with you. And we're hoping that as you watch and as you listen, that you will resonate with some of these idiosyncrasies in your life and realize that they're not just about stress or about the difficulties of life, but these are patterns of thought and patterns of behavior that could come back to this issue of immature parenting in our childhood. So we've entitled this episode, Why Emotional Immaturity Could Be Ruining Your Life, and how recognizing it could be the first step towards finally breaking free and a real shift in our journey. We'd like to welcome you to the I'm at a Mindset with James and Gail. We are so happy to be with you today, and we are so deeply passionate about this theme that we're going to be sharing with you. I'd like to welcome my wife, Gail, to the podcast. She has so much to share, so much wisdom that she has not only brought to the table, but things that she's experienced in her life as well. So, Gail, let me start with the big question for this podcast, the starting point. What is emotional immaturity? For some people, they may not have heard of it before. It might be a brand new concept.
Right.
What is it? And why does it matter? Why should it matter?
Well, emotional immaturity is the failure to express your feelings and emotions in an age appropriate way conducive to the situation. And the reason it matters is if you are not able to regulate, it can affect you throughout your life in every situation.
Yeah. So the story behind this topic and why it's so close to us is about 2.5 years ago, I was seeking some counseling online. And the counselor, I was sharing a lot of the things that I was going through, and I hadn't connected the dots. And the counselor that I was seeing across on video shared with me a book called The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And, I'm not unaware of people pointing to parents or blaming parents or sometimes even being resentful of parents.
Exactly.
But this was a different angle altogether. And it wasn't so much about blaming anybody, but recognizing a reality that existed in most households and exists in most households even today. And that's emotional immaturity. So you said it was the inability to handle emotions in healthy ways,
Right.
to regulate our emotions. So tell us, in your experience, what things have you noticed in adulthood, in highly functioning adulthood sometimes? What are those subtle things? You mentioned some of them already. What are some of the symptoms? What are some of the things that play out? Maybe thinking about what you've seen in me and, some of these dysregulations.
Well, in my own life, I've seen shyness.
Mhm.
I've seen anger and didn't know where it came from. I was very unregulated with my anger for years. And I also found that I made myself very small because I didn't think that my voice mattered.
Mm.
I attribute that everything back to childhood and the way I grew up in a very toxic household.
Yeah, and I was thinking when we were talking about it in preparation that maybe it's about when we're 12 or 8 or even 5, but you were telling me that it can start even earlier than that. I was shocked.
Yes, it can actually start in the womb.
Wow.
The baby can take on the stresses outside the womb. The baby is hearing things and will absorb that stress
Mhm.
before it's even born.
Yeah. And so it starts in infancy. It starts when we're babies, and it's something that is such a yearning inside the mind and heart of a newborn, of an infant, looking for that security and reassurance that these deficiencies, and we're going to explore them a little more in a minute, they can create such a deep, deep hole
Mm-hmm.
that can stay into adulthood. And what's interesting, as we've discussed this, it isn't just that it is a symptom that plays out in adulthood, but it is so hard to spot.
It is
Why?
because people can mask it. People can be hiding in the shadows with it, with depression. They can be highly functioning. Um, the Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, he grew up in a toxic household, but he is driven.
Yes.
His parents fought all the time. They had financial difficulties, and he decided, I'm going to make millions.
Yeah.
And he's driven. So
Yes.
he's a workaholic. Others, it's more obvious. They are addicted to substances or something like that. It can play out, like I was saying, with me being very shy
Yes.
and painfully scared to speak out or be the center of attention.
Yes.
And, there are a couple of examples that I found just recently that I've reflected on that, one, it was so surprising to realize how it played out when I was getting married. I had asked that everybody stay seated with my first marriage. Everybody stay seated while
Mhm.
I walk down the aisle
Yes.
because the idea of everybody standing up and me being the center of attention made me so anxious. And I cried the entire ceremony um, because I was so nervous
Mhm.
at being the center of attention. And then fast forward years later, after I had my babies, I'm sitting in church and I want to raise my hand to ask for prayer. And I start crying because all eyes are on me again.
Yes.
And I was so uncomfortable
Yeah.
with that, and that blew my mind. And but it made perfect sense because it goes back. When I reflect on that, it goes back to my childhood,
Mhm.
because in my childhood, kids were to be seen and not heard.
Yes.
When adults were over, You were not to be seen. You were to stay in your room or stay outside or whatever.
And it wasn't unusual for that generation, right?
That was the generation. I just talked to someone and mentioned this particular subject we were going to be talking about, and the first thing she said was, "Oh, when, seen and not heard,
Yeah.
70s and 80s." And I said, "Yes, that's exactly it." I said, "That is what I was telling my husband." And he was shocked because he grew up in Australia.
Yeah. And that's what is so shocking about this. Maybe you're watching and you've never thought about this before, and then just connecting those dots in Gail's experience from that wedding ceremony to then raising her hand in church. Someone may have thought, okay, she's just emotional over something she's going through, or the wedding, or something she's asking for prayer. I mean, she's a functioning woman, she's a working woman
with 2 kids.
yeah, you were in the corporate world,
Right.
children, fully grown, and who would have thought that deep down were these thought patterns, and deep down was this kind of broken emotional brain of
Right,
sorts,
right.
this
Yes,
this
absolutely.
emotional dysregulation deep down inside
Hmm.
that went all the way back to not feeling seen when you were a kid and not being able to, I guess, have that voice.
And not wanting to be seen
Yeah.
as an adult.
So as a result, you carried this intrinsic shyness and not feeling like your voice had value or your
Oh,
presence.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so you recoiled back as a result. So that's why this is so common. That's why it exists in many households, in fact, in most households, because at some point or another, in every household, there was some level of immaturity in parents, if not one parent, both, or maybe with a guardian or grandparent, anyone of influence over a child's life.
Right.
If they were still dealing with their own immaturity and dysregulation, then often unwittingly,
Hmm.
they passed it. I mean, if you could
Hmm.
pass it with the stress of a parent when the baby is still in the womb, imagine that load and that brokenness and deficiency that can impact that child so early.
Yes.
So when we look at so many things that can impact a child, this emotional aspect is so foundational. We have development in so many other areas of life, physical development, character development. We develop in skills and abilities, but we can do all of that and leave emotional maturity lagging behind so that you could be an adult in every way, fully developed and highly successful, like the example Gail gave from Stephen Bartlett and many other people that are on in the media or doing well, successful millionaires, billionaires,
Hmm.
and still be lagging in emotional maturity.
And have no idea about it
Yeah,
because it's not necessarily talked about.
yeah. Do you remember those paintings back in the 80s where they had all these patterns, and when you would stand back, you'd have to kind of cross your eyes a little bit, and all of a sudden a picture would emerge
Yes.
from the paintings.
Hmm.
It's like it was right there, but you didn't know it was there. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yes.
Well, that's the same with this emotionally mature parenting and childhood and emotional immaturity in people. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. For example, just this week, I was talking to my boss at work, my supervisor, and we had a situation where when we had a meeting, he came away feeling a little bit unsettled. And we noticed that after the meeting, he said something out, and we noticed that something wasn't right with our supervisor. And then when I had a talk to him, had a talk with some other teammates, I realized very quickly that he had been watching our cues in the meeting and he was being hypersensitive and misreading our cues. And he had reacted, I guess, in an emotional way to something that wasn't even there and it wasn't even rooted in reality, but it had its roots in his own insecurity. And, as I've been preparing for this podcast, I could see it.
Right.
I could see it. And suddenly something that may have been threatening to me that a superior at work was behaving that way, suddenly I could step back and go, wow, maybe he also
Mm-hmm.
had emotional immaturity in his upbringing. So once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it will answer so many things. It will connect so many dots. Um, and I guess the obvious, Gail, so when you have this wound, this gap, this hole that's in adulthood, why does it cause so much damage? How much damage can it cause, I guess, and why is it so damaging in someone's life, being
Well,
invisible and being so insidious at the same time?
well, there are certain things that are essential, and Gabor Mate says it. He explains it so well. I love how he explains it. He is a Hungarian Canadian psychologist and author,
Mm-hmm.
and I find a lot of his stuff very, very helpful. He says that the most essential needs of a baby and child is to get secure attachment and unconditional acceptance from their parents. And there are 4 core essentials: secure attachment,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the nurturing relationship with their primary caregiver. The baby's brain is programmed to seek and attach to an adult for care and protection. Foundation for rest within the relationship. A child needs to feel that they do not have to work um, for their parents' attention or regulate their emotions. So they need to have the freedom to just exist. Full emotional expression. A baby or a child needs to be able to fully, from 0 to 10, be able to express all of their emotions: anger, sadness, frustration, happiness, and also creative, spontaneous play. Free imaginative and child-led play is a biological need for proper brain development. This unstructured playtime, where there is no goal or purpose other than interaction, it helps for the child to regulate their own emotions. So they can work on it themselves when they have unstructured play.
So these are the ideals, and I just want you to read just those 4 things, just the titles, because I want to reinforce these would be the ideals for optimum emotional growth in a child. They
Yes.
should be in play, but what he is saying, I guess, through his writings, is that this is what's often missing. Maybe one or more of these things is missing
Right.
and can create that handicap. What was the first one?
But you need all
You
4.
need all 4.
You need all 4. Secure attachment.
Okay, so we need to know that we have security in that attachment with the parent, that the parent isn't absent or isn't in some way
Right,
rejecting.
right. If the child does not have secure attachment, then they will forego their authenticity.
Ah,
If they lose that attachment, their authenticity, their self is
the
lost.
sense of self is lost.
Yes, yes.
And what was the second one?
So the second one is rest within the relationship, just the freedom to exist. This is unconditional love. They need to know that their acceptance is unconditional and they don't have to regulate their parents' emotions.
Okay, so that would be related to kind of anxiety. If you don't have that rest, that security, it can make a very anxious child. Is that what he's saying?
Well, it's not only anxious, it's just the child should be in their own emotions, not
Oh,
saying, "Oh,
okay,
mommy, I'm
okay.
sorry you're sad,"
Yes,
you know,
yes.
kind of thing,
Okay,
or "I'm scared because you're angry." They
yes.
need to just be able to exist
Yes, in of themselves.
in of
And often there's like
themselves.
a role
Yes.
reversal, especially as a
Right.
child is growing up. They start kind of being the parent, or the
Exactly.
parent is starting to offload some things off to the child. Number
Absolutely.
3,
Number 3 is full emotional expression.
okay.
So they need to be able to be in their
Yeah,
emotion. If they're feeling angry, they need to see that through. They need to feel all the ebbs and flows
yes.
of the anger.
So if a parent is stifling that, saying, be quiet, or don't cry, or anything that stops that child from feeling the full gamut of emotions.
Right.
That does not allow.
Then they suppress
They start suppressing.
their emotions, and they are not in touch with their true self.
Wow. Wow.
So
And
that's another way they can lose self.
That last one to do with play.
Right. Creative, spontaneous play.
Yeah.
So that's where they use their imagination, and imagination is very, very important. And that's where they can practice, using their emotions.
And so how is that hindered, like by a parent? In what way does a parent hinder that spontaneous play?
Well, there are some parents that think that play is not important, or they don't know how to play with their child. They weren't played with.
Yeah.
So they don't know how to play with their children and role play and,
or even
with
tell
dolls
stories.
Or tell stories or anything.
Yes.
And engage in that imagination, the child's imagination. Or they're too driven. I know in some cultures they're very driven to, success is from the get-go. Success is very important.
So
play
children
is
not allowed to be children.
Right. They're not allowed to be children. Yeah.
As Gail was sharing this, I was thinking how insidious this is, but also what a fine line we need to walk, especially as parents ourselves. And for you as a parent, perhaps as a parent watching this, or a parent that's already older, that a lot of these things we may have already made mistakes in, and it's not something where there's any healing in just heaping on guilt and shame for these things. I guess there are two aspects of it. One, we're all children of parents, no matter how old you are, even if parents have passed away. We're still children of parents, and there's still always an opportunity for growth, for healing, to find that wholeness with this knowledge. But also as parents, even if we're parents with adult children or young children, we believe that there's still an opportunity for us to shift our behaviors. As we become more aware of this, we start noticing it in ourselves. And I truly believe that we are able to change as long as we take, you called it like that self-agency. What was that term you used when we own our own healing?
Yes, own your agency.
Own your agency.
Yes.
Own your agency. It means not victimizing ourselves and saying, poor me, this is the way I am, I can't help the way I am. No, this is about recognition that if we've developed in other areas, there's no reason why we can't develop in our emotions as well.
Well, if you don't, then you stay stuck. You stay stuck in the past where your parents left you.
Yes.
And it's important to own your agency and move forward.
That's it.
And heal from all of that. Leave the past in the past.
Yep.
And own your agency so that you can move forward into healthier emotional regulations
and thought patterns.
Yes. You create, better pathways in your mind, and you don't default back to those negative things that that kept you stuck.
And that was going to be my question. What is the price of ignoring this? Well, you can go away from this video and just think to yourself, wow, that was interesting. That's for somebody else. That's for my husband, or for my wife, or that's about my mom or my dad, or that's for my child. This information is only useful. It's only as good as we allow it to speak to us individually.
Exactly.
And it's only as useful as we recognize that with this information, it can really be a game changer for our lives and our thought patterns. I mean, all the things that we mentioned at the start of the program today, it's surprising how many people walk around thinking those things, but we may not say it. We may not tell people, hey, I'm always feeling like I say the wrong things, or no one is listening to me, or I'm always feeling unseen in a social situation, like I don't have a voice, or I tell everybody that I never go on Facebook, but secretly I go on Facebook all the time and I obsess watching other people's success in their lives and I feel the sense of jealousy. Or how about the common one where we just don't take joy for other people's achievements because deep down we're feeling like, it puts us down or we feel somewhat envious of other people's
Mhm.
successes. These are things that we don't talk about, we don't verbalize, but yet they're definitely thought patterns that go on in our minds.
Well, your parents may have acted in one way, but it is displaying in your life. You've internalized and it's displaying in your life in different ways.
Yes.
It may not be exactly the way you were treated.
Hmm.
Your parent may have been an angry person and yelling. So therefore, you are quiet and you hide away when
Yes.
there is any kind of discourse in your life.
Yes.
It can be the opposite, but it's going to show up because you may not even realize that you are damaged in that way until you do some self-reflection.
Yes.
And that is important to your own personal growth
And it shows up in our human relationships,
all the
most of
time.
all, especially with those who are closest to us.
Mhm.
And needless to,
Careers,
yep, sorry.
your careers
Yes,
also, your
yes. I mean,
careers,
those are relationships
every,
with superiors, with
right,
workmates. The way we filter everything is through these lenses that we carry into adulthood. So that leads really well into the big question: how do I know? Like someone may be watching, going, "Nah, that's not me." How do I know that I have hidden emotional wounds without even realizing it? How can I be sure? What are the signs? What are the symptoms? How can I spot them in myself and others? Um, so we've already touched on some of these. I want to unpack some more because there's quite a list. Now, this list has been compiled from research, but mostly from research in our own lives
right,
because
self-reflection.
yeah, we both recognize right off the bat that this is a particular area of growth for us. And if you didn't hear our first episode, we encourage you to watch it, episode 1, because we tell the story of how we came to start this podcast, and it really is from our journey, from my
Right,
journey, from your journey, and the things that we've learned, coupled with, I guess, the years that we've lived, and our desire to want to break free from that, to grow and change, and really take a hold of life. And then coming from our Christian background, where people of faith, we carry such a strong burden that we don't only want to keep that sense of healing and wholeness to ourselves, we want other people to experience that as well. We see the world around us so broken right now. Even as we go to air, this week has been horrendous with violence and with horrible things on the news. And a lot of people are affected, and some people just don't know how to regulate those emotions. They
right,
don't have the hooks, how to negotiate these really difficult situations. So there's a lot of anger on the streets right now,
right.
and people are encamped in different camps. So much anger, so much vitriol, and it gives me pause to think, a lot of that might be a response to what's going on, but much of that could be coming from everyone's different levels of deficiency with emotional regulation, and
Exactly.
that's why it spills over. So let's talk about some of these symptoms. um, People pleasing. Have you heard of people pleasing?
Yes, I've lived people pleasing.
So what in our common day conversational explanation, how would we see people pleasing? What is that? How do you see it in you and me and others?
You are foregoing what you like or what you need and putting the needs of others in place of yours.
Yes, absolutely.
Putting it first, which can in and of itself be a very good thing if you are a person who is hospitable or you love to serve or you see the needs of others and you want to help. However, it can be just plain old people pleasing. You don't know what you like or what you need,
Yes.
and it's easier to suppress your emotions, your feelings, and put others first.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because, yeah, in some beliefs and philosophies, serving others is a very high virtue and a high value. Not living for yourself, not being selfish, but serving God, serving people. And so it seems on the surface that it is something honorable to do,
Mm-hmm.
to put others before yourself. And like you said, yes, it is. Yes, it is. But it has to come from a place of security and wholeness.
Right.
Uh, I heard once a counselor say to me that you can't you cannot help others. You can't spill over to other people's lives if your cup isn't full in the first place. And so if you are deficient, if your cup is empty and yet you want to help others, what you're going to be doing is using that as a crutch to kind of fill a wound.
Right.
And I can tell you from firsthand experience, since I worked in ministry for many years, and as a church pastor, that is my calling. That remains my calling to this day. And I love being there for people, and so do you. But I noticed the nuance of that and how it becomes enmeshed in your lack of self-worth and how it can become unhealthy in some ways. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about people pleasing. Unhealthy ways of people pleasing is when you forego, like you said, your own self, your own healing, your own interest, your
Mm-hmm.
own likes and dislikes. Often I would suppress things that I enjoyed for the sake of others, only to become very resentful. I also was constantly worrying about what people thought of me, and I'm being
Mm-hmm.
very candid because I know it can help others. It may have been subtle in the back of my mind, but it was always like a casting a shadow over
Mm-hmm.
things because I was constantly misreading people's cues, hypervigilance, kind of watching my back, fearing people's displeasure or people's rejection or people's emotional abandonment. And so I know full well the destructive aspects of people pleasing.
Absolutely.
When it's healthy, I believe that's what the mandate is all about, to flow into people's lives from an area of security and health and wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's not healthy, it can lead to just very destructive
Very destructive.
patterns of behavior that end up sweeping the problem under the
Mm-hmm.
rug. Tell me about, we talked about shyness earlier and how you suppressed yourself. Um, how about the pressure to perform? If you've got a parent who was, like you said, very driven, or you were clamoring for their attention and their approval, how can that be a negative when it comes to performing? Now, religious speak, people call it works sometimes. How does that play out, and how can that be a negative?
It can be really, really detrimental to you and your relationships if you are work based, performance driven, and you've got goals and you're trying to reach those goals. That's not a bad thing.
Yes.
But if you set aside your relationship with your spouse, your children, family, friends, just for that goal,
Yes.
that's going to be a temporary win. What are you hoping to get? Because material things
Yes.
can never fill that void.
No.
That money can never fill that void. And you're not feeling anything inside.
Yeah.
Everything is all external. It's going to be the accolades. It's going to be, yay, you just got 1 million subscribers. You just
Yeah.
sold your first book. You just got a job with the greatest company. What is it going to cost you though?
Yeah, and it comes back to what we spoke about last time when we spoke about self-worth versus self-esteem. Self-esteem, we said, was something external.
Exactly.
And if you're trying to chase the approval, because works is often related to getting approval,
External. Mm-hmm.
external approval. When you fall short of that approval, not only do you feel like you were unsuccessful, but you feel like you are no good,
You feel like you're not enough.
that you're not
You're not
enough.
good.
And so if
You're
you're
not good enough.
continually doing works to chase approval, if you're continually doing works to fill that self-worth hole that you have, then when that's not there, it's going to have cataclysmic results on you as a person, because you're going to feel less than for not achieving what you wanted to achieve.
Right. There's a perfect example of that.
Mhm.
I can't remember the guy's name, but I saw an interview and he reached the highest peak,
Oh, yes.
Mount Everest.
I think it was one of those big ones.
It was the highest mountain,
Yep, yep.
whatever it was. He reached it, and that was his goal. And he speaks of this being a very traumatic experience after he came off the mountain
Yes,
because he did not feel it
I
inside.
remember that.
And he actually thought about unaliving himself.
Unaliving, so taking his own life.
Yes,
Wow. That is crazy, that someone could achieve something so great. And as I'm saying it, I'm hearing the words that I'm saying. You can achieve something so amazingly great, and then the next moment feel
so
that
deflated.
deflated, depressed, that you don't even want to continue living. Wow. Wow. And I mean, that speaks to me, because in my experience, I certainly was able to do a lot of things in terms of my work, up front work in the media, with music, often in front of people. And I guess in some respects, I feel like I did some amazing things, had a great privileges, uh, only to often at the end of it be left with some severe self-criticism, often empty, because it just doesn't fill it.
Mm.
And some people that are celebrities, they have this constant need for this drug to fuel their self-worth, and no matter how hard they try, it just doesn't cut it. So that performance, external performance to try to fill the hole, just doesn't work.
Right.
And other things, I guess, insecurity that you bring from childhood, mood swings, imposter syndrome, where you are in a position, but you deep down feel like you're not worthy of it. If people only knew how ill equipped or how hopeless you are, that is pretty common, especially in the corporate world.
Absolutely.
Shame, anger, loneliness, emotional loneliness is a big one.
Yes, that's so huge.
When you have been left devoid of that security in childhood, you carry this sense of isolation where you may be even in a room full of people, or you may belong to a church, or you might come from a big family, and still you feel this sense of emptiness or this lack of belonging, this emotional loneliness. And again, it's one of these insidious, invisible symptoms that can come from those very early years in infancy, where there was this lack of attention, perhaps from a parent that didn't have the maturity or the understanding, this lack of attunement to the feelings of that child, this this lack of emotional empathy and sensitivity, and a security where the child knew that it was safe, that the child could come to the parent for comfort and for unconditional love. If those things are missing, it's amazing how they can carry over to adulthood.
And you have experience with that.
Yes, yes, I do have experience with that. We grew up in an immigrant household in Australia. Both my parents migrated from Chile to Australia back in the early 70s. And so we were raised, and this is where it's interesting that you can come from a home where there's a lot of visible trauma or toxicity, or maybe shouting, or a lot of visible issues. I came from a middle class home where we went to church. My parents worked a lot. They had multiple jobs. They put food on the table. They showed their love in very physical ways. But when it came to emotional connection, it wasn't always there.
Right.
Sometimes it was because they were just physically not present. We were latchkey kids, so we would let ourselves out to go to school with our parents had gone already to work. In the afternoons, we would come home and watch cartoons and let ourselves in. And my parents would often work into the evening. My dad would have a part-time job on the weekends, a side hustle, as they call it now. And so physically, I guess they weren't there, but also there was some brokenness that was brought from their childhood, especially my mom coming from a very broken home. There was a lot of poverty from where she came. There was a lot of abuse in very different ways. So she came to parenting not that young, actually. She was close to her 30s, but with tremendous deficiencies when it came to emotional maturity and security in her life. I know that she herself is very protective over not wanting to speak ill of her parents, but in reality, there was no real normality in her upbringing. I think there were 12 kids in the home at different ages, and there was alcoholism, and there was physical violence, emotional, what would you call it, manipulation, and things like that. And so when she came to have children, and I was the firstborn, she just didn't, for lack of, for no lack of want, she just didn't have the hooks to know how to do that. And so she has told me in recent years that she even struggled to want to pick me up as a child, to embrace me as a child, as an infant, as a baby. And sometimes there were other family members that would come and would pick me up because my mom didn't know how to connect at that level, though she clearly loved me. And then because she had to go out to work, she would leave me with babysitters as an infant. And I don't know who these people were. I have this vague feeling that there was a lot of anger as a child there. And all of that put together meant that little James, although he came from a pretty stable home, there wasn't any major trauma with a capital T. In fact, on that score, that score
The
of trauma,
ACE.
the ACE,
Yeah, the ACE.
I would probably score pretty low. And yet the deficiency was super deep.
Tremendous, yes.
And here I am now in my early 50s and still working through a lot of these things. And those patterns played out in my first marriage. They played out in my parenting with my kids. They have played out in our home. Still working on those. And they go all the way back. What is that, 5 decades? And still working on these things. It goes to show how deep these things are.
But you're just now acknowledging because you didn't have the tools. You didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important. Once you find out these things and acknowledge these deficiencies and name them, then you can do something about them.
Yeah.
And you can own your agency.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, it's not because we don't want to know. It's just so hard to pinpoint.
Right,
these
right.
things.
You think it's all within you, but
Yes. Oh, yes.
you carried what she carried. You carried her wounds into your adulthood.
Yes. But they were connected to me.
Right.
So I tended
And your self-worth.
I tended to blame me.
Exactly.
And I was enmeshed with that idea. So I wasn't able to detach from it
Right.
and look at it in front of me and go, wow, this is a thing. And that doesn't define my personhood.
No. Not at
I've
all.
always seen it as just me. So this brings us to another thing that we want to say here. So could your parents have struggled with emotional immaturity? And Gail's already shared what it looked like in infancy. So think about that. Babies need food and safety and shelter, but they need more than that. They need emotional connection, as you've said. They need caregivers that comfort, acknowledge feelings, respond consistently. Emotionally immature parents often fail to do that, and they leave children feeling emotionally unsafe. And and with responses that overreact. Parents can overreact. They can withdraw, they can dismiss, or they can even be very inconsistent with their emotions. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. I just want to do a self-assessment for this episode in trying to think whether this could be you. And Gail, I guess, for you as well, even though we've talked about it. How would you answer these questions? That's a rhetorical question. Number one, my parent often overreacted to small problems. Number two, my parents struggled to understand or care about my feelings. Number three, emotional closeness felt uncomfortable and unavailable. Number four, I often took care of my parents' needs, what we were talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't support me, or at least I didn't feel like they supported me. And number five, sharing my successes or feelings didn't seem to matter to them. So, in those five very simple questions, how many of those would you agree was your experience in infancy or in early childhood? Even if there was one, that could be a sign. But if there was more than one, maybe all five, it is odds on that you also went through this childhood experience with an immature parent, one, or maybe both parents, which would be compounding to any child. And in our research, we talked about that book. What was the author's name who wrote the book?
Lindsay C. Gibson.
Lindsay C. Gibson. And the name of the book again, because it's an awesome book.
Yes, we highly recommend it. Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Yes.
In that book, in chapter 4, she talks about 4 different types of emotionally immature parents. One is the emotional parent.
Mm-hmm.
This is the parent that's run by his or her feelings and is highly unstable. A lot of mood swings, a lot of inconsistency in feelings, maybe a lot of meltdowns and anger, a lot of impulsiveness, not a lot of deliberate action or rational decision making, but everything made on emotions and feelings. So that's called the emotional parent. How would you respond to that? Does that ring a bell for you? Was there emotions in your
Yes,
childhood?
there were lots of emotions. My grandparents were alcoholics, and we stayed with them on the weekends.
Yes.
So there were a lot of emotions flying there. At home, my parents fought a lot.
Yes.
My dad worked a lot, but when he was home, they fought a lot. So
Yes.
it was very emotional all the time.
And you were telling me that has played out in your experience somewhat as well, with emotional dysregulation in parenting.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll put my hand up to that as well. And
Absolutely.
so I certainly see this category in my experience, that the emotional fluctuations. The second one is the driven parent. This is the parent that is compulsively goal oriented and controlling. This is the parent that wants their children to achieve certain things, and perhaps it does not come across as unconditional in their love and approval unless they see achievements or certain standards or certain things
Right.
done with career, with studies, with grades, and that sort of thing.
And that was not in my household.
Yeah. So that one you can't
I
relate to so much.
cannot relate to that one. I can relate to control,
Yes.
but in a very different way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think for me as well, it's not a major one, but there are, we talk about our parents, and especially one of each of our parents. In your case, your dad, and in my case, my mom. Um, in terms of career and achievement, even though they may not want to admit it, they will show favor, or when we're achieving, and maybe doubt if we're not achieving. So it's kind of subtle, but I think there's a little bit of drive there, more about success, or I don't know. So it's not a
Right,
big one.
right.
The third one is the passive parent. Sometimes this may be coupled with a driven parent or an emotional parent, where one is driven or emotional, and the other one is just passive. They avoid conflict as much as they can, and they withdraw, especially when they're under stress. Can you relate to this one? Did you see this in your family home?
Well, the passive part, absolutely, with my mother, but she was passive aggressive.
Okay. What is passive aggressive? How do we explain that one?
Well, I can give you examples.
Okay.
For instance, my girlfriend was moving, and this was our last night for us to see her before
Yes.
she was going to be going to another school.
Mhm.
So I asked my mother, can I go out with them to dinner, these friends, to say goodbye for
Yep.
her farewell?
Okay.
And she said, you'll have to ask your dad.
Yeah.
And I said, Daddy's at work. He doesn't get off work until 6 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't answer then.
Yeah.
And I did not get to go.
Wow.
Or can we go across the street and play? No. Why not? Because they have to come over here.
Yeah.
You know, my friend would have to come across the street because our friends, we only played in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So those are two examples. Or she would just ignore when I would talk to her. She would not answer me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that passivity is not uncommon. I've heard that before. You know, go and ask your dad or go and ask your mom. And that also is a form of withdrawal from the child.
Right.
Because the child is looking for something from you. And then there are other spouses that there may be issues in the marriage, and that, you know, go and talk to your mom or go and talk to your dad. And it's like this deflection
Right.
from the passive parent.
And that's played out in my previous marriage, yes.
Number 4 is the straight out rejecting parent. And as extreme as this sounds, it can happen. This can be one or even both parents where they are completely disconnected, cold, and unempathetic with their children, where children are seen as a disruption, as an interruption. Parent can be reading the newspaper. Well, that's in the olden days. And like you said, children need to get out of the room, not be heard. Or often there's like this level of impatience with kids because they're just in the way.
Right. My dad was big into television when we were growing up, and if his show was on, you'd better not make a noise.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he's like that with Judge Judy now.
Oh,
yes. So, yeah, during Judge Judy, you've got to be quiet if Daddy is watching his show. And my mother, she was very cold to me. She did not hug me or anything. And I don't know if some people can relate, but when I was a kid, my mother would clean out my ears with a Q-tip. Mm-hmm. And I would long for her to clean out my ears so I could be close to her. Wow. Because there were no hugs, there was no warmth. Yeah. And just putting my head in her lap was very, very comforting. Soothing, yeah. Because I didn't get that except for when she cleaned out my ears, which is so weird.
But it goes to show when we're children, we can be so vulnerable and so needy because we're little and we look to our parents or our first caregivers for fulfillment in all these areas. And it goes to show how much, just even to clean your ears, you were just wanting to be close to your mom.
Right.
And you told me also that you really valued when your dad did give you some affection. Yes. Even though he wasn't overly affectionate, as a child, you really received every bit of affection that you could get from him.
Right. So if I had a nightmare, my dad was my go-to parent.
Yes.
And so when I would have a nightmare, I would go to him, and in his slumber, he would put his arm around me and, oh, baby, it's okay.
Wow.
And so, it made the nightmare not so bad.
That wasn't his baseline, but when he did that, it meant a lot.
Oh,
to
it
you.
meant the world.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's important to realize that even doing small things can make a huge impact on a child.
Right.
So whose fault is it? I wrote a few thoughts down. Understanding your parents' limits isn't blaming them. It's seeing why some struggles aren't your fault and why these things need attention. Most emotional immaturity is unintentional, beyond the parent's awareness. The goal isn't betrayal of the parent,
No.
it's clarity, it's understanding the patterns to be able to start your own healing. Does this mean that they didn't love us? Of course, our parents loved us, and the fact that they provided in all the other areas means that there was love there.
Yes.
They just didn't know, or they loved us to the best of their capacity, as
Yes,
you've
that's
always
what it
said.
is. Yes.
And they just didn't know how to do it. If it wasn't shown to them, how could they show it to us? So, how can we heal and rewrite the emotional patterns from childhood? I want to leave you with these 4 things. First of all, awareness. This whole episode has been about awareness, about recognizing that this exists, that this is a real thing that's actually more prevalent than we even think, and that these patterns occur in ourselves and in others. We're all about awareness and naming it. Naming it. This is a reality. Emotional immaturity is a reality. It isn't us. It was something that was handed to us very early before we even had a language to name it then, and even capacity to understand it.
Exactly.
So awareness. Number 2, this is a big one. I've called it auto-nurturing or self-parenting. This is not easy to do, but we have to try to envision ourselves as little children, as infants, little Gail, little James, little you, and maybe provide that support and validation that you missed as a child. Gail, you had a good suggestion that could involve a photo of little you.
Yes, get a photo of you as a child and talk to that child and tell that child that it was not their fault. It was not your fault. That child did not have the capacity for it to be their fault.
Yeah.
And they didn't receive what they needed. And tell yourself inside, it's okay, and you're going to be okay because now you have recognized that it wasn't your fault, and your parents did not do this intentionally, usually, most likely, but you can heal from it.
Yeah.
There is
So
healing.
auto-nurturing, being aware, maybe even verbalizing it out loud, saying that you matter, I
Right.
love you, and validating. Validation is so important. So awareness, auto-nurturing. Number 3 is affirmation. I want you to say this whenever you encounter it with a parent, or in maybe someone else that might be speaking to you and offloading on you. You can say, "I won't take it on as my own. This isn't about me. It's about them.
Yes.
I'm not going to receive it. I'm not going to internalize this. This is not about me. This is about that person. They're obviously deficient emotionally, and I'm going to place it where it belongs. It's clear to me, and I'm not going to make this or take it on for myself." Again, not an easy thing to do. With the awareness and the auto nurturing comes that next step where you refuse to accept it. You refuse to accept it and internalize it.
It was never yours to hold.
Yeah, yeah. It was never yours to hold. And lastly is action step, and that is to set boundaries with compassion, to detach. It may require physical detachment from people in your life that are offloading on you, that they're passing on these stressors that are treating you less than, that are just negative influences. Sometimes that may require boundaries with compassion to not allow, even physically, these people to bring you down.
Right,
Yep,
right.
yep.
And ironically, tonight, before we started taping, I got a drunk dial call from my dad. I get that weekly. And I see it as a loving gesture because that's when he is his most authentic self, I feel like. So I get the soft side of daddy. He asked what we were doing, and I said we were preparing to tape for the podcast. And he explained that my stepmother had told him about it, and he doesn't know what a podcast is, but he said he was not interested in watching it, and I did not receive it. I did not receive that. I know that even if he knew what it was and he chose not to watch it, he chose not to support, it is okay. I give him grace because I love him, and it doesn't define me. It doesn't define what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't receive the negativity. He is giving me his max capacity, and I'm okay with that. And I can detach and not let it hurt me. And I think that's very, very important for you to do with someone in your life if they are seemingly bringing negativity. It is not about you, it's about them, and you don't have to receive it.
So awareness, auto-nurturing, affirmation, action steps, setting boundaries with compassion. So emotional wounds may be invisible, but they're not untreatable. They're a signal pointing back to your desire for self-worth, or to your actual self-worth. It may have shaped your story up until this point, but it doesn't have to define your future. It doesn't have to define your future. Healing begins when you stop carrying the responsibility for something that was not yours, and you place it over here and recognize it for what it is. Emotional immaturity that exists, but it was not your fault.
Nope.
It is not that you were broken. It was a wound, a deficiency that was left inside of you. I did come up with a term called emotional miswiring, or a distorted script. We're going to unpack that a bit more later. But that's all that's been going on. It's not you that's broken. It was a wound that went back to childhood. So that is our episode for today. I hope that you found it helpful. If you've reached this far, we thank you for sticking with us. We are trying to be as raw and authentic as we can, as honest with everything about us, because we want to help you to break free and to achieve a breakthrough in your life. We believe that it is possible. We care about you. We're doing this because we extend love to you. We extend grace. We believe that God loves you and wants something better for you. And next time when we come together again, we'll be exploring how kids adapt and survive in these environments. And of course, we're going to be looking more at the hidden cost of the roles that we play in adulthood as a result of emotionally immature parenting. We're going to launch a second part of this series next time. I've called the series Invisible No More because we are going to be invisible no more. We invite you to join us again next time on the I Matter Mindset podcast with James and Gail. Bye from me.
Bye for now.
And we'll see you next time.